All right, we'll call the meeting to order. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this extraordinary meeting of the Transport and Infrastructure Committee, which is here today with the sole purpose of addressing Auckland Council's submission in response to the draft government policy statement on land transport. Before we get into the item proper, we have a few formalities as per usual. There are a number of members online, and I will note those members now, and if there's anyone else we can add to that. So I have Councillors Ferry, Leone, Sayers, and I'm looking up and seeing Councillor Dalton and Councillor Foley. So I think anyone else out there in the ether? No? Okay, so we've noted those members online. We come to the first item as apologies. We have received apologies, which is on the screen, from Deputy Mayor Simpson on council business, Councillor Filipina. We have apologies for lateness from Councillor Walker, who was walking the talk and catching the Gulf Harbour ferry, so he runs a little tight on schedule, but he will be here. Are there any more apologies that we have? No?
Happy to move.
Okay, moved by Councillor Fletcher, seconded by Councillor Turner. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Come on to item 2, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations? No. Item 3, welcome Mr Mayor, petitions. No petitions in this section, which brings us to item 4, which is public input, and we have received one request, which was received and accepted, and to that end we have a delegation from all aboard the Transport Decarbonisation Trust, who wish to speak to Auckland Council's submission in response to the draft government policy statement, and who were able to actually get a copy of that submission late this last evening. So we appreciate the effort that's gone in from that delegation, who will come to the front table now. And as they're coming up, I'd welcome Paul, Jessica and Magali, who will be addressing us today regarding the submission that we will be considering in just a minute. So the team have been told that they have 5 minutes to present to us, after which there will be no doubt a couple of questions. If you see the little microphone button, you're okay with that, so just press the right one and the red marker comes up. Okay, welcome, and over to you, Magali.
Thank you so much. Kia ora, team. So my name is Magali Menard. I'm the Executive Director for All Aboard Transport Decarbonisation Trust. Joining me today is Jessica Palleray, the Executive Director of Lawyers for Climate Action, and Paul Whitten, the Chair of the Board of Trustees for All Aboard. We'd like to start by thanking you so much for accepting our request to join the conversation, and specifically for all of your hard work on this submission on the GPS. We were very pleased with most of the recommendations that were put forward. So following our review, we'd like to emphasize the need for Auckland Council to retain their ability to take concrete action on largely decarbonising the transport system by 2030.
Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. As Magali said, my name is Jessica and I'm the Executive Director at Lawyers for Climate Action New Zealand. And in the couple of minutes which I have today, I wanted to zoom out and contextualise the GPS within New Zealand's wider climate obligations, talking here about legal obligations, domestic and international, as we are concerned that the draft GPS takes us well off track to meeting our climate targets and commitments, and that could result in legal problems for the government moving forward. We know that transport policy is one of the key levers that we have for meeting our climate commitments. That's very, very clear. The Climate Change Commission has made that clear, and we understand the Council accepts that as well. And we agree with the Council's concern that the sole reliance on the ETS to reduce emissions is worrying, and apparently the government's lack of interest in tackling the decarbonisation of transport. We're very concerned by that, as transport can't and shouldn't be taken out of the picture. The climate commitments and legal obligations that we're talking about here, which we think the government has not recognised in the GPS and which could be made stronger in the Council's submission. We're talking here about our emissions budgets, which we know the National Party has agreed to. We're talking about our 2030 NDC, which we are not on track currently to meet, which is a international legal obligation which the government has a good faith and due diligence obligation to meet. And we're talking about our overarching goal to reach net zero by 2050 and to hit a 1.5 degree target per the Paris Agreement. The draft GPS makes no mention of any of these commitments, and we are concerned that, if passed, it will demonstrate a lack of good faith by the government when concerning our legal commitments, but also it's very difficult to see how we're going to meet our emissions budget, and we're concerned by that. This context is critical, and we support the Council's concerns about the lack of climate as a priority within the draft GPS. Thank you.
So just to add on, the draft GPS risks embarrassing Aotearoa internationally due to its departure from climate and safe system planning. The significant shift of investment away from the already underfunded safe and sustainable travel to roading exacerbates the roots of climate crisis and negatively impacts the productivity and economy of Auckland. The reputation risks created to the country extends by default to each city and region forced to follow the policy.
So I'll briefly comment on the draft GPS and then I'll make some suggestions that might be made to the submission, an excellent submission. So the draft GPS, as it stands, is a great document if the objective is to strangle a city with cost, congestion and carbon. On cost and congestion, paragraph 180 in your submission nails the absurdity of the draft GPS, which permits investment only when demonstrated volumes of pedestrians and cyclists already exist. My 11-year-old daughter caught an AT bus to school today and my 9-year-old walked 2 kilometres to school today. That took one car off the road at peak time, gave me back the better part of an hour to come and talk to you, and gave my girls a sense of independence and the health benefits of a stroll. Had that not been in place, there not been a relatively safe walking path and a cost-effective, timely bus service, I'd be losing a day a week to being a taxi. These productivity issues are real. But living in central Auckland, I'm one of the lucky ones who can actually do that. We need to make this available to everybody in this city. On carbon, the draft GPS says that the ETS will do all of the work. To achieve Auckland's goals would require a carbon cost that would add about $1 a litre to petrol. That would smash travel very quickly by car, but without alternative modes, as the draft GPS sets us up for, we simply strangle the freedom to move around Auckland and cost Aucklanders almost $1 billion more every year. Lastly, the draft GPS reaches into local government decision-making, will make innovation using existing infrastructure hard, what we need to be doing more of, and is entirely incompatible with the wishes of Aucklanders. So, our recommendations on your already excellent draft submission, 3 things. More strongly reject the proposed restriction on walking, cycling and public transport investment. Auckland cannot deliver its plan with these shackles. Secondly, call for health to be more explicitly prioritised. We know that upwards of 3,000 people are already dying every year because of transport pollution, and that comes at massive social and economic cost. And lastly, the GPS should explicitly prioritise for carbon emissions reduction. Fixing this fixes everything at the lowest cost to council CapEx OpEx and the lowest cost to the pockets of the citizens of New Zealand and Auckland. And that can be done by delivering on the TERP that has already been committed by the people in this room. So in short, the GPS should be rejected and rewritten to reflect the needs of Aucklanders and the needs of New Zealanders. Thank you.
All right, right on 5. Well done, folks, and a lot compressed into that presentation there. So we'll take a couple of questions, and Councillor Hills.
Kia ora, thank you very much, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. Surprised you got here after seeing it so late last night. The question I have is the economic impacts of some of the GPS, if we have those public transport cuts, and also what does leaning into the ETS do to the pockets of Aucklanders? So what, if we truly are to use the ETS without any fallback or funding in climate activities, what will that tangibly do to a family or a person in the next few years?
Sure. So shall I comment on that? So it is in principle possible to use the ETS solely as the vehicle for decarbonisation of transport, of everything. The best current estimate from recent research on this is that it would add between 70 cents and $1 per litre of petrol. If we work through the maths on that, that will cost Aucklanders on the order of $1 billion a year out of, and this is just light vehicle, this is not freight, so it's more if we start to add freight into that, about $1 billion extra per year. Unfortunately, because there are no meaningful alternatives at the scale that is needed, cycling, walking, and buses, and that the cost of those is proposed to go up because of the comments around fare box capture, it is likely that there would be even more costs to consumers than that, and that it would massively constrain Aucklanders' ability to move around our city.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, and finally, Councillor Henderson, and then we'll finish with Councillor Turner.
Thank you, Chair. Fantastic presentation, and a reminder that I've got to re-up my subs for the Lawyers for Climate Action. Just in terms of legal risk, because I think it is something we do need to take into account. Lawyers have been on the front lines in climate action across the world. Just want to assess, is there a legal risk for the government's draft GPS, and have there been cases brought overseas against governments for lack of climate action?
Yes and yes. So climate litigation internationally is a really effective way of holding decision makers to account. And we're also seeing that in New Zealand. It's not just an international phenomena. We're bringing cases against the government already in terms of lack of ambition and lack of compliance with our overarching legal frameworks. So yes, that is a risk. And yes, the government should be thinking quite carefully about the steps it takes because it needs to comply with its obligations. The window of opportunity is rapidly closing, and we are closely assessing what the government is doing.
Thank you.
Finally, Councillor Turner.
Thank you. Just two questions. First one, do you see the hypocrisy I see between what we say we want to achieve and 4 vehicles following one man around to pick up rubbish, trucks trucking dirt to the other side of the city to put it into a fill, trucking aggregate all the way from halfway down to Taupo back to the city? Those sorts of considerations also have an effect on carbon. Do you see that?
We're stuck in a system that obliges us to behave in certain manners at the moment. We're stuck in that system because the decision makers have not yet allowed us to move as quickly as is needed to change to a more sustainable future. Auckland Council is in front of everybody in this country and actually taking action that will lead to the future that our kids need. So it is true that we are in living hypocrisy at the moment to some extent. It is also true that we are locked in that hypocrisy. You need to embrace that and support people like you to make the right decisions so that we can shift away from those excessive consumption patterns.
Thank you. Second question, what should we do to unlock that hypocrisy?
You walked straight into that one. We should deliver on the TERP. In Auckland, we have an excellent and world-leading plan that will deliver the lowest cost, best outcomes for the citizens of the city. It serves as a poster child for not only other urban environments in New Zealand, but also other places around the world. We know that the Mayor and the Council has signed up to the C40 City again, and that has been noticed. People live in cities that they want to, that they can move around easy, and people are making decisions on the basis of their ability to move comfortably around a city. Auckland, under the proposed GPS, would be going in the wrong direction. If we can just deliver on the TERP, and we've had a couple of wrinkles in that, then we will get there.
Right, thank you. There's a recommendation up there to receive the input from all aboard regarding Auckland Council's submission on the GPS, and thank you for attending, and particularly thank you for your own analysis of that document so late in the piece. So I think we moved by Councillor Henderson and seconded by Councillor Fletcher. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you very much again. Next item up is local board input, and there is no local board, but as I understand it, Robert will be addressing in his presentation some of the local board